Yo, what's up guys? Blake here bringing you a special video today. I got the gear and deck setup video for my fire. I've had so many people ask me for this video, and I use a pretty unorthodox setup on my fire, but let me show you a couple combos that you could do because I have just about all the gear for my fire. So yeah, let's get right into that. Alright, so this is the setup I'm rocking right now. I got 7k health, nice clean health amount. I got 160 damage, 44 universal resist, 33 accuracy, 53% crit, 37 pierce, 100% pips, and 12% shadow bonus. I mean, this setup is absolutely gas. If you're first, you basically can't lose unless you're against an ice that's just warded and has brace the whole time, or a Nova. Sometimes they're pretty annoying, but I mean, this setup's so good. Basically, my strategy is I just spam Beetle and strike as soon as I can, since I have such a big shadow bonus. And this is a very aggressive set because there's no point in taking, you know. You can go with a health setup, but I find that this is the best one. At least it's the most fun for me, you know. But it's not like I'm super sweating. So let me show you what I'm using. I'm using the Dragoon's hat instead of the Mouser hat. And the reason for that is basically just for the extra damage. I play so aggressively. This setup gives me a little bit extra damage. It gives me a little bit extra health. And it allows me with this hat, I can use the Brigade robe instead of the Mouser robe and still have good enough accuracy. And it gives me a little bit more health and stuff. It lets me go up to 7k. I just like this setup overall. So yeah, I know my resist tanks a ton, but I don't really need the resist in the first place. But I'll show you guys some other setups that I use. So yeah, I'm using the Dragoon's hat, the Radiant robe. This is dropped by Corporal Tennyson. I got the Dragoon boots. These are so good. You should use this on basically every setup you use. I've got the Caputin's boarding hook. You definitely need this one. The craft one does work, but I would definitely recommend the Sinbad wand because it's so much better. I mean, you basically have the same exact damage. All you lose is one flat resist socket, one pierce, but in exchange for that, you get like 15% crit, and it makes a huge difference. So yeah, I definitely would recommend that. Edge of the Raging Daystar, definitely want to go with this. You can also use the Dragoon's dagger, and I'll show you a setup later, but I would still recommend using this one. For the Amulet Chain, there is no alternative. You just got to get this one. It's a pain to get, but go for it. Definitely also need this ring because of the pierce. This ring is used by everybody level 100 and plus in PvP, unless you're, I don't know, you're setting and you're using like a resist ring or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, you need to use this ring. It's just so good. For the pet, I rock two different pets. These are the two that I switch between, but recently I've been using this one with Infal. I do want to remake my Infal pet and rock one that has Infal and Brace, and I'm also working on a pet that may have multiple Maycasts on it. So a pet that might have like Maycast Pierce or Maycast Steel Ward or Maycast Shatter, and then on top of that like Maycast Fuel or Maycast Infal, because that's going to be really meta, especially with turn-based coming pretty soon. And then this is the other pet that I use if I'm facing a ton of fires or ices, or I just feel like going warded. I get about 70 resist, and I have the Brace Jewel, so that's tight. So yeah, these are the two pets that I switch off between. For the mount, I also switch off between two different mounts. I have the Balance Sculpture. Unfortunately, I don't have the Fire one, but I mean, it doesn't make a big difference anyway. You don't even need to use the mount. And then I have the Rock Ultra, and the Rock Ultra is so good for fire. In my opinion, the Rock Ultra is the best mount in the game. Not for every school, but it's so good because it allows you to keep your 100% pips but still rock a lot of combos. So I really like it because it can, to me, it just opens up so many more combos, because for me, I hate having less than 100% pips because I need to rely on combos. You know, I'm always thinking like 2-3 turns ahead, and if I get a fail pip and I can't finish the combo, that's game over. So to me, having 100% pips is extremely important, and that's why I love the rock mount. And then for the deck, I just used the Duelist one. I know people like the Paradox, but I would strongly recommend getting this one because it gives the most amount of crit, less than Paradox, but you still have the same percent, and it gives you 6 copies. And it's so important because as a fire, you basically need to stun block turn 1. Like, that's your move, especially at high rank. That's your move every game. Stun block turn 1. There is no alternative. You might Beetle, but you basically want to stun block every turn, unless you're going against like a Balance or something like that, or Nova. But even then, you want to stun block basically. And because I'm rocking the Rock mount with this setup, I can use the Shadow Pip Jewel, and I definitely think this is meta. I get so much crap from some people. Shout out my boy Jeffrey, but I would definitely recommend using this if you can get it, because it's just so, like, what else are you going to use? Sure, you could socket accuracy, but at the end of the day, you know, I strongly recommend this setup because having that extra shad, especially for fire, is so important. It's a shad meta, and being able to have more shads, especially when you're second, is so important because it's basically whoever gets shad first. If you get shad before them, you can just shrike and put them in a position where they can't go offensive. And it'll oftentimes win you the game if you can predict their dispel or avoid it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. Alright, so this is a setup if I'm trying to go with a little bit more resist. So my health drops about 500 health, which makes a pretty big difference actually. You might not think so, but especially with the Shrike meta and health meta and everything, losing 500 health just makes you a lot more squishy. So my damage tanks a lot too. I lose 24 damage, so that's pretty big. But my resist does go up. I gain about 10 universal resist and a ton to ward, so it's really nice if I'm going against a fire or an ice. So if I'm facing a lot of those, I'll go with this setup. But I do prefer the glass cannon setup. It's just more fun for me. But yeah, this is a very good setup. Also, a lot of the times I'll face Novas, so having ward pet really doesn't help. And you want as much damage, and especially infoul for Novas because they'll just spam shields, you know. So yeah, that's why I usually use that setup. But this one's very good too. 33 accuracy again. 53% crit, very solid, 37 pierce, and my shad pip goes down to 10, which is still really good, but we keep the 100% pips, which is just so clean and I love it. So let me show you what I changed. Basically, it's just using the Malister hat instead of the Dragoon one, and then switching to the Malister robe because you need the extra pips, because you lose 3 from the hat, but you gain 3 by using this robe. And then I switched the pet from the infile one to the brace one, and so that basically just makes me a little bit more tanky if I'm facing a fire or ice school, basically. So yeah, this setup is also very good. It really just depends on your playstyle, what you're going for. But yeah, that's another good setup. And I'll show you another setup you can use, but I'm not a huge fan of this one just because you can't get 100% pips. So this is the last setup you can use. These stats aren't exactly how they would be because I am missing the sockets on this just because I've never used it. So just understand that I would have 12 more pierce, 13 more accuracy, and 125 more health if I was using that dagger. So you'd be rocking about 7.5k health, 160 damage, 43 resist with 39 accuracy. And then you'd have the same crit, 52%. Your block goes up slightly to 7%, but that's not really a big difference at all. Like I said, you'd have 37 pierce, and then your pips would drop to 97 with 9% shad. And this is with the rock mount, okay? This is with the rock mount and using basically maximum amount of pips that you can get. So this setup gives you a little bit more health. You get 7.5. So in my opinion, I don't like this setup just because losing those 3% pips, it's just not worth losing the extra health or the extra shad bonus. But that's just me. It's all personal preference at the end of the day. But yeah, this is another good setup. You can also switch to this robe if you really want to. I've never tried this setup, and that would bring up your health massively. You'd have about 8.4k with this setup. And yeah, like I said, I don't have any of the sockets in, but I might try out this setup on stream sometime just for fun. Your crit does tank, but your block goes up a decent amount. It seems like this setup could be pretty fun, and you'd have 99 pips, which is 99 is good enough. If you guys remember the meta for fire before Sinbad came out, before Catacombs, 99 pips was the meta for fire. You couldn't get 100 really with the gear setup, and that was fine for the most part because 1% is okay. I still remember losing games because I would King Art or FFA and then be like, okay, I need to Scorch next turn, and then I would get a fail pip. So, you know, it's okay. The setup I've actually never tried. So yeah, those are the different combos you can use. You can really play around with the gear. It depends if you have the rock mount or not, or if you have the shad pip jewel. But yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with fire. In general, I would recommend probably the glass cannon setup just because, you know, you're going so aggressively as a fire anyway. You're not going to win long-term game against an ice, you know. It's basically you have to hop and strike as soon as you can, beetle spam, and just, you know, try and predict their dispels and hope they misplay if you're second. And otherwise, if you're first, it should be an easy dub most of the time. But yeah, like I said, this is the setup that I love using just because you have such a high shadow chance, pretty solid health, and good damage, good crit. This setup is just the most offensive fire, and that's how I like playing fire, at least for me. But everybody's different. Sometimes I like switching to the warded playstyle, playing more defensively. If I do that, I throw in braces in my deck. But yeah, for the pets, like I said, I would definitely recommend either one of these two. Either fire and ice ward or a universal with infile, something like that, or a make cast pet. Those are definitely the best ones. And then you either want it on a scary or a velociraptor, but it doesn't really matter, you know, fire beetle works too. So yeah, let's get into the deck setup now. So this is the ranked deck that I'm using. I do switch it. I don't like with a fire. I really don't like having a big deck. Now I know a lot of you might be thinking, Blake, what are you doing? Your deck is so small. Let me tell you, I already don't like some of these cards piss me off. I don't want Krampus in my main deck. I don't want an enchant in my main deck. Like every time I see it, yeah, I just want to take it out. Like I literally just want to take it out. But I've been thinking, okay, let me try this because sometimes Cramp is useful from second. But honestly, I think like sometimes I just take it out and play without Krampus because you don't really need Krampus. It's so situational and such a gamble anyway. I'd rather go for like a Magma Colossus or, you know, a Fire Gut or something. So honestly, I would not recommend even packing it, but if you find situations where you need it, you can. But you know, it's so clogged, like having enchants and hits in your main deck. So yeah, this is a really solid deck. So let me just go over why I have everything in my deck. I have 6 stun blocks. That's the maximum amount of stun blocks that I can put with this deck. And as you can see, it's a huge percent of my deck. I have 23 cards in here plus 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 27 cards in my deck and 6 of them are stun blocks. So that means that I'm basically almost guaranteed to pull a stun block first turn. And the importance of that is that you can spend your first turn discarding. So it doesn't matter if you don't pull a set shield your first turn, or you know, you don't pull your beetle or your fuel or something like that. It's really just so important that your first turn is almost always stun block. You know, you got to put it up there. Even if you're second to Shad, unless it's like a Storm, you kind of have to stun block first turn no matter what, because you don't want to do it a later round when they've had time to blade or, you know, to set up on you. So yeah, the reason why I run stun blocks is because you can spend your first turn discarding. So if you don't pull everything you want first turn, that's fine, because you can literally, what I do oftentimes, especially as a fire, but even on my ice or my storm, is I literally just discard like my entire hand except for the things that I need, place the stun block, and then I'm ready for next turn most likely. So this is why I really like having a bunch of stun blocks in. I have 2 storm shields in, and the reason for that is most of the time against a storm, you kind of have to just tower shield anyway because of insane. But you know, it's good to have a couple storm shields. I like to just have some for every school. I have 2 shields for each of the spirit schools. It's because I really don't face spirit schools at all. So I just have one of each of the 3, the myth, life, and death 70 shields. So yeah, that's what I do for that. And then I have 3 thermic shields, and the reason for that is because I basically just play fire and ice all day. So I could do something where I did like, you know, 2 of these and then 2 of these and 2 of those, but the reason why I like having 3 thermics is because if I wanted to do it 2 turns in a row and try to have, you know, multiple shields, which would buy me a turn to do other stuff. So that's why I like doing that. I keep 2 fire dispels, and the reason for that is it's just so important for you to draw your fire dispel against a fire, because the matches are so quick. You need to draw your fire dispel. And another reason why is I've had times where I'm second and, you know, I fire dispel the turn they fire dispel me, and I need to draw my other dispel really fast. So it's good to have 2 in your deck. That's why I run 2 of those. I run 3 bubbles. I would definitely recommend at least 2 to 4 bubbles, and the reason for that is just because most of the time you're not really bubbling as a fire. I mean, you can, but you don't have to because Beetle's so strong. So the only time really you should be bubbling is if you're like starting a bubble war, is if you're first and you're against a Nova or high health ice. And Bubble's really good against Nova because they almost never change Bubble. So if you're going against a Nova, you should bubble as soon as you can. As soon as you can. And then I keep 4 strikes in because strike's just so important to have. You want to get it as early as possible, and also you might be discarding for cards. You might need to strike twice in a match. Usually you only strike once, but strike is such a good card, so you got to keep it in. Then I keep 1 fuel in and 1 beetle in. The reason why I don't keep more fuels is because I'd rather just spam beetle. I'll show you my side deck later, but I have 2 different kinds of beetles in my side deck, and I have this from my main deck. So that's already 3 different kind of beetles I can do. And why would I fuel when I can get a hit that takes away a shield and do the same thing, you know? It's the same amount of pips. Fuel, like look at this, fuel is a 30 trap, and then beetle is a 35 trap plus a hit. So most of the time you're better off just beetle spamming. So I do keep the 30 fuel just in case, but I wouldn't recommend running a regular 25 fuel with potent trap and all that. I would just spam beetle basically. And then I keep a shadow shield in because I've been facing a lot of Novas lately. I just added this. I was stupid and I didn't add it earlier, but if you're facing Novas, definitely pack in a shadow shield. 1 want hit, and that's only for Novas, and it's basically if I get stun blocked. So yeah, that's the main deck. Like I said, I know my deck might be really weird to a lot of people, but my playstyle is I play very aggressively, and I'm trying to pull exactly what I need right away. So I don't like preparing for a ton of things. It's basically either I'm gonna win the match really quickly, you know, or I'm gonna lose the long-term game. So that's why my deck is so small. I know a lot of people like to fill their deck up, but you really don't need to. You just pack the essentials, what you need. There's no point in packing a bunch of shields that you don't need. You're not gonna be shielding more than like 2-3 times a match maximum as a fire. So I like to keep my deck really, really small. So now let's go to the side deck. This is the side deck I'm using right now. It's a little bit big, to be honest with you, as a fire. I would like to shorten it a little bit, but I added a few cards. Like, I added an extra fiery giant, I added an extra Magma Colossus. Sometimes I even add, let me find it. Oh, I need to make more. I even add a third brim usually. So I like to keep it under 4 rows or less, but yeah, this is just like good cards to run basically. So I run 1 Cloaked Ice Dispel, and that's why I also don't run Dispels in my main deck. It's because I run this 1 Cloaked Ice Dispel on my side. I might need to pack Dispels in main if people start stream sniping me or figuring out my strat, but basically what you do is if you're first, you shouldn't be Dispelling most of the time, because you're fire, you don't need to waste 2 pips on a gamble play like that from first. So if you're first, you're only going to use Fire Dispel basically, or an Ice Dispel if you absolutely have to, but you really shouldn't. And then from second, you hit them up with the Cloaked Ice Dispel, because one of 2 things are going to happen, right? Either one, they're going to think it's their school to spell, and they're going to do something like Blade or Shield of their school, something like that, to get rid of it and find out, oh wait, it's not that school. Or 2, they're going to go, okay, I have a Dispel on me and I need to shield right now, because they're going to go for a hit, and then they go for a Tower Shield, or they go for a, what's that shield called, dude? I always forget. Or a Volcanic Shield, and then they freak out because they think it was their school to spell, but they just got juked. So Cloaked Ice Dispel is huge. I definitely recommend packing one of these in. It's more effective in quick match because you can go for like an elf play. It's most effective when you have a dot on them. But yeah, it's still really good to have. I keep 4 towers in. 4 is a good number. I would recommend something like 3 to 5 towers. You don't really need more because, you know, you should never be tower shielding unless you're going against a Nova, against a Balance, or a Storm. And that's because Balance is Balance and Storm has Insane Bolt. So other than that, you should always be, you know, at least minus 70 shielding. So that's why I don't have that many in. I keep 2 Brims. Like I said, sometimes I pack in 3. It really depends, because Brim is a very good card and you do want to pull it. I recently added 1 Magma Colossus. Magma Colossus is a really underrated spell. It's basically like Athena, but less damage and a bigger shield. So the times that you should be using Magma Colossus are when you have either you're warded with Brace Up and you can afford to use Magma Colossus, or when they're not in Strike. If they're in Strike, a minus 40 shield isn't going to do anything for you. So it is a very situational card, but it's very, very powerful if used correctly, and it can win you the game just because it has so much value. I keep 4 Ifrits in, and the reason for that is because Ifrits is such a good card. You know, it's like it's the staple of fire, you know? So you definitely need at least 4 of these in. I would recommend 4, maybe 5, but 4 I find is a good number. In general, I pack 2 to 4 of all my hits, and I find that's a pretty good number for me. I pack 1 Fiery Giant. I have not used this in forever, but it's really useful against fires. And when you're second, sometimes you need to go for that combo play. So I definitely want to mess around with it and just, you know, have some fun with it. But yeah, Fiery Giant's pretty cool, and I packed 1 into my deck. I don't know if it's going to add extra clutter, because before I made this side, I wasn't running Fiery Giant or Magma Colossus, so my deck was slightly smaller. And, you know, sometimes you just, like, even adding 1 card can throw off, like, you know, your perception of how you're pulling for things. So yeah, Fiery Giant is a very good card though, especially when you're second to a fire. Sometimes you have to. Then I have 2 Fire Sharks. These are just my finishers. You can't pack Elf anymore, unfortunately, or any 2-pip hits. What you can do is pack Link. And I know you guys are thinking, dude, that's so sus. And the reality is, yeah, it is really sus. But, you know, if you don't have Fire Sharks, it's still an alternative. It's good for taking out minions. I wouldn't really use it as a finisher unless they're super low health. That's why you're better off with Shark, especially with the trap stacks that Fire does. But it is something you can do, just so you know. Then I pack 3 FFAs. I find that 3 is a pretty good number too. I'm not the kind of guy that will just go for, like, you know, the first turn open shad, so I don't need a bunch of them to pull. So yeah, 3 is a good number for me. 6 Beetles. Definitely recommend having lots of Beetles in your deck. Lots of Beetles. At least 6. And the reason for that is because, think about it, what's going to be the first thing you pull from your side 80% of the time, or, you know, most of your matches? It's going to be Fire Beetle. So you really want to be able to pull it and pull it quickly. So what I do is I have 2 different kinds of Beetles, as you can see here, and even though there's no symbol that differentiates them, they do stack. So let's say I fire beetle with this one, then I fire beetle with this one, and then I fire beetle with my pet. They're going to be all different traps. So it is very useful to carry different fire beetles, but I wouldn't trip, especially if you're low rank. Don't worry about it. You can just run the main fire beetle. And a lot of people ask me where I get my beetles from, and I get mine from red bell peppers. You can buy them at the bazaar. Just make a plot of them and harvest them at mature, and when they're about to get elder, just let them wilt, and then, revive them. I mean, not revive them, but, just take care of them, and they'll reset back to, I believe, the beginning stage of adult, or maybe the level before it. I can't remember, but yeah, that's the way to do it for sure. Then I keep 2 King Arts in. If you're a lower rank, I would probably run 3 King Arts, to be honest with you. But the thing is, at high rank, everybody stun blocks. Like, everybody stun blocks. Maybe like 1 in, I don't know, 15 games, the opponent won't stun block until either late in the game, or they just won't stun block in time for you. But it's such a situational card that I only keep 2 of them in, because it can win you the game, which is why I pack 2 of them. But it's so situational because everybody stun blocks at max. I keep 3 Scorches in, like I said. 3 of each shadow hit works for me, but it's all personal preference. 2 Fire Guts. Fire Guts is so important to have, especially with this ice meta. You need to have Fire Gut, because sometimes it's the only way you can win to an ice, especially from second. You need to have those cards that create value for you, and this can take off a shield and give you a shield all in one turn. I mean, it's such a great card, such a great card. Then I keep 1 stun in. It's good to have a single stun, because sometimes you need to. Like, sometimes you need to go for the single stun, so it's good to keep one of those in. And then I keep 1 mantle in. Sometimes I throw in a second mantle, but like I said, I don't like having a really big side deck, especially for fire. So yeah, this is just what I've been using right now. In general, I think this setup is really solid. Obviously, you can tweak it. Everybody plays differently. So like I said in my ice setup video, my deck might not work for you. You might be that kind of person that likes to keep everything that's in their hand. You might be that kind of person that discards everything every turn. So you really have to adjust your deck based on your playstyle, how you cycle, what you discard. But yeah, I find that this deck works very well for me. Another thing is, this deck is for high rank, max PvP. I'm like 1200 something rank. So, I'm facing a lot of the same school, Fire and Ice and Novas. If you're at a low rank, you're just starting your ranked grind, you might need to add more versatility with your set shields, more variety, just because you're going to be facing more of the schools as opposed to high rank, where it's just the top tier schools most of the time. So yeah, this is my setup. It may not work for you. Like I said, you might be thinking, Blake, you're crazy. Why is your deck so small? You're mental. But I'm telling you, this works for me. And yeah. So last thing I'm going to show you guys is my quick match setup, because I know a lot of you guys have been asking for that. Alright, so this is my quick match deck that I use. This is one of the rare times where you'll ever see me use main deck enchants, and the reason for that is just because Fire Elf is so good in quick match. So yeah, let me explain everything. So 6 stun blocks. Again, first turn you're going to be stun blocking almost no matter what, unless you're like second to a storm, something like that. A couple set shields for all the schools. Basically the same set shields I run for main. And then I keep 3 enchants with 3 hits. I do keep a Krampus in quick matches, because sometimes from second it's your only play. So, but sometimes I even just take this out and I'll just run the double elves. So yeah, honestly, you're probably better off not even running the cramp. So yeah. I run 2 dispels because, like I said, having the fire dispels is so important. Only 1 strike, because you don't need to strike unless somebody's setting for you, really. Or it's like a crazy ice that's just braced and like ultra warded. But like 1 strike is fine, is what I'm saying. So this is a pretty solid deck. I do run the beetle, and then I run 1 wand hit, just because, if you need to take off a tower but you want pips to combo, it might be your play. And yeah, Fire Elf's so good. So I run, again, a glass cannon set, but if you're running like a warded set or just a normal resist set, you might want to throw in like a few braces. But yeah, I'm running, when I do quick matches, I usually just run my glass cannon in foul setup, so I don't even run brace. Then for my side, it's pretty similar to my main, just slightly smaller, because, I have less beetles, and the reason for that is because either you're first and, you're going to use beetles, but like you're first, you're going to win, so you don't really need to pull for them as urgently or as effectively, or you're second and you're basically going to be fire elfing. So yeah, I keep 1 stun, 4 towers, 2 brims, a Magma Colossus, Fiery Giant, 4 Ifrits, same amount of shads. Pretty similar to my main deck, just, a little bit more concise. I'm just missing a few cards, a couple beetles. But yeah, other than that, this is basically what I use for quick match. It's pretty similar to my main deck, and it's pretty similar in strategy too. You just play, I guess, a little bit even more aggressively, and strike isn't as important. That's the main difference, basically, is that you already are striked, so you don't need to worry about that as much. But yeah, my strategy for quick match is basically if you're first and you fire, you can't lose. You literally just beetle or elf spam, and it's over. Or you're second, and what you have to do, oh yeah, and I forgot to add a cloaked ice dispel, or 2 cloaked ice dispels I add. And the reason for that is because in quick match, the cloaked ice dispel with the fire elf strategy is so good, right? Your second, you already have 7 pips. So your first turn, you're probably gonna stun block. Now you're at 9 pips. Now at 9 pips, you can do one of 2 things. You can shield, or you can go for a fire elf, and then you'll still be at 9 pips or 11, right? And then at that point, you know, you have the fire elf going on them. What I do usually the first turn of the fire elf is I'll shield myself, and then the second turn I'll go for the cloaked ice dispel, and at that point you should have enough pips to either King Art or Ifrit into a Scorch. And that's just brutal because they'll do one of 2 things when they have the elf on them and the cloaked ice dispel. They'll either think it's their dispel and they'll go ahead and blade or something, or, you know, do some weird play, or they'll try and shield, and most of the time it's a tower shield or it's a volcanic shield. So it's actually so good. I can't tell you how many matches I've won from second in quick match because I did a fire elf into a cloaked ice dispel combo. And sometimes when you do that, you go for the cloaked ice dispel into Ifrit, you have to predict. If you think that they're going to shield or something, you might need to beetle and then Scorch. So you just have to predict their moves, stuff like that. But fire elf works in quick match because of the damage and the pierce. So, you know, your fire elf is going to do like 1500 damage, you know, 1500, 2k if you crit, depending on your damage, all that stuff. So it basically replaces the need for beetle traps. So that's why fire elf is so good in quick match. And in my opinion, I think fire is the best school. Maybe not now because of just how tanky and crazy good ice is, but yeah, fire is amazing in quick match, so you shouldn't have a problem with that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I tried to go over everything, but if there's anything I'll miss, you know, I'll add it in the comments or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. Went over all the gear, the deck setup, you know, the pet setup, all that good stuff. So yeah, the Shadow Pip Jewel is really good, like I said, for fire. Oh, I'm not even using it right now because I was doing the quick match deck. But yeah, this Shadow Pip Jewel is so good, but it's not necessary. But I do notice a difference, and I do think it's helpful. Like I said, my strategy is very offensive fire. What I do is basically just stun block turn 1 into essentially beetle spam shield if you absolutely have to, but you basically just play aggressive until you can strike and then just go in, you know, predict their dispel, predict their shields, and that's basically what fire does. So yeah, and there's no need to bubble really unless you're countering their bubble, like they've already put one, or if you're like first to an ice or a nova or something like that. So yeah, like I said, this deck may not work for you, but it works for me with the way that I cycle, that I discard. And I would definitely recommend, if you don't already, make a small deck. Look at your deck and think, what can I take out? What do I not use? What am I pulling too much of? You know, what do I barely use? Those kind of cards, because at the end of the day, you don't want to prepare for everything. You know, there are just some games you are going to lose. You know, if you're second to an ice that knows what they're doing, you're probably going to lose unless you get shads more than they do and really quickly, or you do a perfect dispel, play perfectly, and they misplay. So there are just some games you can't win. You shouldn't prepare for everything, so there's no need to pack like 5 -80 ice shields or something crazy like that. You know, you kind of just have to go with it and see what happens. But yeah, like I said, this is what works for me, and I would definitely recommend a small deck. And using the cloaked ice dispel is so good because it allows you to not pack dispels in main deck. So it really reduces the clutter, and it's so effective because as a fire, you don't need to dispel from first because you're playing so aggressively anyway. So it's really only from second where you'd have to do that. So yeah, I hope you guys learned a thing or two, or you could see some cool combos that I rock. If I come up with any new ones, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, that should be about it. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I stream every day on YouTube, so make sure to come watch and come hang out, you know, support your boy. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna keep uploading probably every other day for now, but I might increase it to, you know, every day, or like 5 times a week or something like that in the future. I'll keep you guys posted. But yeah, thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.